Welcome back to another episode of Financial Fortitude. Today we're diving into a topic that can make or break the future of your financial plan, buying or selling your business, and what not to overlook before you take action.
That's right, Michael. Whether you plan to sell your business you've spent years building or are looking to buy a business to grow your portfolio, this is one of the most complex and high-stakes decisions you'll likely ever make.
And to help us navigate these waters, we're excited to welcome Justin Sandridge, an experienced M&A advisor with Murphy Business Sales. Justin has been through countless transactions and knows exactly what to look for and what to avoid when buying or selling a business.
And for this topic, we are breaking things up into a mini-series format where we dive more deeply from start to finish into the specifics of business exit planning, where we'll cover things like the key financial, legal, and operational details you can't afford to miss, how to prepare your business for a sale and maximize its value, and common mistakes buyers and sellers make and how to avoid them.
If you're a business owner thinking about an exit strategy or an entrepreneur looking for your next big opportunity, this series is packed with valuable insights to help you make smarter, more informed decisions.
Let's get into it and make sure you're fully equipped for one of the biggest moves in your business journey. Welcome to the show, Justin.
Welcome to Financial Fortitude, a podcast for high earners, families, and business owners. We're your hosts, Michael Acosta
and Brady Hemmerly. Each week, we bring purpose-driven financial guidance to you so you can be assured you're on the right path. If you're looking to become an extraordinary wealth builder, let's dive in.
Well, Justin, we're excited to have you on the Financial Fortitude podcast today. I'm going to allow you to give a little bit of background of who you are and what you do professionally. But before I do that, just to set the stage, I think today's topic is very timely just because of what is transpiring in the U.S. ecosystem. There's a ton of businesses that are coming to market and a ton of business owners that are probably ready to hang it up and get into their third act or really just sunset and enjoy the rest of their lives. But Justin, you bring a unique set of skills to the table whenever there's a buying and selling situation taking place with businesses, right? You're a certified business intermediary, CBI, and you've got extensive background and experience with mergers and acquisitions. So give us a little bit more background about yourself and let everybody know who you are.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it. I'm Justin, and I'm a business broker. So I help people sell and value their companies. That process, I've been doing it for probably 7 years. I'm also a business owner. I've bought businesses myself personally. So I've been through the process. So I've been on the sell side, I've been on the buy side, and I'm on the sell side again. So it is a very stressful process. I think people think that the sale is going to be easy. It's nothing like real estate. It definitely is a process that takes time. It takes some planning, and it takes some mental strength to get through the process. And I've been doing it here in Charlotte for the past year, just relocated my office here from Baltimore to the DC market. I opened up an office here in Charlotte, and that's what I do. Yeah.
So Justin, I guess the first question that I have is, how did you get into the M&A or the business broker space? Like, what led you there and why?
Accident, probably. I sold my first company in 2015. I didn't know what I was going to do when I grew up. So I knew that I was going to get into business again and get into another business venture, and I wasn't sure what that was. So I took some time off to realize what I did wrong in my first business and hired a coach after I sold the business. Do not do that, for sure. Definitely do it before you buy or while you own the company. But I knew I didn't want to go into the second opportunity, with the same kind of mindset that I had when I was 30 years old. And so I knew I wanted to do something. I kind of went to some franchise trade show in New York City. Over that first year, I knew that I wanted to help business owners. And I didn't know what that meant for the first year when I was kind of trying to figure myself out. And I didn't know if I was going to be an insurance, a banker, a financial professional. I wasn't sure where I was going to go. And I came across this guy that would kind of get people into the industry. And I said, what is a business advisor, broker, whatever they called them? And he goes, well, we help people sell companies. And from that point, I kind of that sounds very interesting. Knew nothing about the industry in 2016, really. I mean, I didn't even know business broking was a thing then. Spent about 6 or 7 months kind of researching it. And ultimately, my wife said, you'd be good at that. I think you should do that, because she tells me no probably 90% of the time. But when she said yes, I knew that was the shot to do. So she said, yeah, I think you can do that. So I kind of dug into that and studied it for probably about 8 or 9 months to figure it out. And I just knew I wanted to help a small business. And I knew when I was in small business and when I ran a company you're kind of stuck in your little world of running a company, and you just don't know there's people out there to help because you don't have time to go to networking events and you're not reaching out to people. And so that's kind of why. And then selfishly, the second reason probably why I got into it is that, well, you know what? I don't want to start a business from scratch. Like, no way. I don't want to make no money for 2 years. So I knew I wanted to buy an existing company. So I said, well, maybe I'll get into business brokering, and then maybe I'll get first shot at a deal that comes across my desk. And ultimately, that's what happened. So, but
you basically get first rights of refusal.
First right of refusal.
Because you're seeing the deals before they go to market, right?
Yes.
Very similar to real estate.
That's right.
Thanks for sharing that and giving us a little bit more background. And I love the fact that we have you on our show today because, again, this is a big, I don't want to say problem that's arising in our country, but just to set the stage and provide a little bit of landscape of how things are looking in our country. It's kind of crazy, right? Like, so there's about 18 trillion in net worth that's locked across 32 million privately held businesses. And this is a stat as of 2021 from Corporate Value Metrics LLC. So, if you want to go search for that online, you can just reference Corporate Value Metrics LLC, and I'm sure it'll come up. And it's very eye-opening, right? Because that is a ton of wealth that's locked up. Now, with that being said, all 32 million privately held businesses, it's probably a smaller number of businesses that are actually operating. The vast majority are probably holding companies. Now, when it comes to bringing your market or your business to market, it's not as easy like you alluded to where you just wake up one morning and you say, hey, I'm going to go put the for sale sign up out front and I'm hopefully going to have a couple showings this weekend. Maybe bake some cookies, put them on the kitchen counter so it smells good when the people are coming in to look at the business. It's very much different than that, right? If we get into the statistics of it, about 20 to 30% of businesses on the market actually sell. That's a pretty low, in my mind, probability of success if I'm a business owner wanting to successfully sell my business.
Yeah. And only 10% of the businesses as an entirety actually do sell. And that's kind of a stat too that you're right, a lot are holding companies, but that's kind of a thing. Some of the generation, I've seen people that thought that they would just run their business until they died and they just shut the door. People didn't even know that they could sell it. It's provided a lifestyle business for them to provide for their family. They never looked at it as an investment. So you're right, that's 100%.
So who are you seeing in your world in regards to demographics? What do business owners, the majority of them who are now looking to sell, tend to look like, feel like out there in the world in normal America?
Well, in 2016, when I got into this, they told me big wealth transfer happening next 10 years. Well, we're about 2 years away. Those damn boomers just don't seem to want to get out the door, right? So
it's still coming.
They are just holding on. I'm like, we're about 2 years left, and I haven't seen a whole lot of it. COVID definitely kind of took a big hit. So I've been hearing this since 2016. The next 10 years are going to be big transfer of wealth. And then COVID happened. A lot of companies, nobody was buying until companies recovered, and it took some time to prove that they could recover. So that kind of delayed it probably 3 years for that process. So you do see a lot of boomers now that kind of getting to the point where you're either going to sell it now or you're just maybe going to die in the chair at some point. And some of them, there's no right or wrong. I say if you enjoy what you do every day and you love going to work, then just work till you can't work no more, right? Some people just love that. And I've met people like that. They want to do it till they die, right? And that's an exit strategy, probably not the most preferred one, but that is an exit plan. So, I do see a lot of people kind of in that situation, but most of them have zero advanced planning. Most people, they just think they put a sale sign up, put some cookies out. Well, the guy down the street that owns the same business as mine, I heard he sold his for some 3 times revenue that I hear all the time, which is completely not correct. But no two businesses are alike. Like you could have a business here and your competitors across the street could be completely different, the way that business is ran and the way it's valued. So,
and we're going to scratch the surface of that a little bit deeper here later on in the show. This is when we're going to start talking about the 4 C's, what goes into the actual valuation. Because what I think a lot of business owners don't recognize is that about 80% of their valuation is intangible assets, right? Or intellectual property, if you will. And so it's a matter of, well, one, how do you even get that valued? Because you reference a multiple of revenues as far as getting to what you should list your business at or what you should hope to get out of it. And aside from that, it's also, well, business owners tend to be working on so many other different fires, operations, making sure that they're trying to get to profitability, making sure that they can start paying themselves because so many business owners will operate on a loss, making sure that they're keeping their staff and employees in the chair, but then also making sure they continue to have their sales funnel full and thriving. And it's very hard for them to actually sit back and make time to work on their business.
That's right.
And we coach clients all the time, business owner clients all the time, and letting them know, hey, if you really want to think about selling your business in the future, and very frequently these business owners don't even conceptualize that. It's like, hey, I'm just a lifestyle business owner. My business's sole purpose, aside from me being maybe passionate about it, is to provide my lifestyle for me and my family. I want to get as much revenue and income out of this as possible without thinking about selling it, right? Taking it when I'm toes up in the grave. Mm-hmm. Not even thinking about the other two doors that we can walk through potentially if we're proactive enough to say, hey, let's identify someone internally that we want to sell it to, so selling it to an insider, or maybe even taking it to market and getting it dressed up so that it's more attractive to either the private equity space or some sort of outsider, right? Maybe it's a competitor who wants to just absorb you.
That's right.
So as business owners, we're distracted is one thing. We just don't have the time capacity. And so this is where being coachable and saying, okay, well, who are the professionals that I can surround myself with that are going to help me through the decision-making process of, do I want to be a lifestyle business owner or do I want to be a value creator? And they're not one and the same. The value creator is constantly looking to grow and expand and continue to add value, not only to their customers, but also to their employees as well as their family and themselves.
And I don't know what it is with some of definitely the boomers that are out there. They just think they're going to live forever. And how many do you come across that don't have life insurance or really any financial plan? They just think they're just going to, my dad is definitely an example of that. Like, he just thinks he's going to live to the end of time. I said, Dad, everybody's going to go one day. And they just think I'm going to run it indefinitely and don't have to plan for that. And I said, well, you're kind of doing a disservice. Even if you're young, I mean, you could get hit by a car tomorrow. It doesn't even matter, like, I'm retiring. I mean, you could just die, right? And that's horrible to say, but that's the reality. And if you really cared about your employees and you cared about your customers like you say you do, well, I really care about my employees. I want the best buyer or somebody from my business because I really look out for the people. They took good care of me, and my customers have been great with me for 30 years. Well, then why don't you set a plan in place so that something happened to you, that business can carry on? If nothing else, like, you're a lifestyle owner and you want to be a lifestyle owner, there's no right or wrong there, but at least have a plan and set your business up so that if something happens, there's not a single point of failure. And that's the other thing that people, I think, kind of miss. And I'll think about in the future, but you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. And I think in financial planning, the same thing, right? You see people just don't have a plan. They don't think about it. It's a naughty word that they put in the back of their head, and they don't ever want to think about it. They put their head in the sand.
And that's the challenge that I think we see with business owners most often, is it's one of two different things. First and foremost, without the plan, we have no idea what our best day looks like. What could my life look like if I actually do the work and try to work towards an ultimate sell here? What could my life look like otherwise? Clients don't really understand, what does my worst day look like? What happens if I walk across the street, the car's zooming past, they're not looking, they're texting on their phone? What does the business look like? And then for any circumstance in between, the biggest challenge for a lot of our business owner clients are almost all of their wealth is locked up in some form or fashion or packaged in their business. All of their wealth is just waiting to be realized either on a sale event or waiting to be realized per someone else because, hey, I'm not around to run the business anymore. And I guess that's where having a trusted team, whether it's a business broker, a financial professional, a team of accountants, to help begin those conversations as to what business sale or business transition looks like. And I guess, Justin, this is where I have the question for you. When is the right time to really start that plan, or at least consider starting that plan?
The perfect answer is the day you start your business. So if anybody's listening to this podcast that just started your company, well, you need to plan how you're going to exit it. And that goes more beyond selling. That's also, is your idea to own 5 locations? Do you want to franchise your brand? Do you want to be an international corporation? Or you just want to be a local mom and pop business? And kind of plan towards that. So you should really start when you get into business, is where am I heading and how am I going to get out? Because again, nobody's going to live forever.
I'll jump in there. Let me ask you this question. In the vein of, I start my business the next day, I should start exit planning. How would you have changed, or what would your journey looked like if you had that mindset in running and starting your own first business?
Yeah, well, that's true. I mean, my first business, I thought I was going to run that forever. I really kind of did. And it wasn't until someone came knocking on my door to buy it, and then I had a thought, like, do I really want to do this forever? And the answer was no. And I was lucky enough. I got very, very lucky and very fortunate to get out, because I had really no idea what I was doing in my first company. I look back and I kind of laugh. but I didn't know. I didn't have a plan. And I just got somebody knocked on the door and offered me some money. And I said, sure. I didn't really.
Why not?
But I was 34 years old or something. I was pretty young. So I knew I had plenty of time to make more money or do whatever. So it wasn't retirement money for sure.
But that's best case though, right? In practicing, what is our best case or best...
Oh yeah, someone knocks on your door. Here's a suitcase full of cash.
Yeah, it's like, best case, someone showed up at my door. I didn't even have to put cookies out. They just bought the thing from me.
That's right. I mean,
but
that's rare.
Few and far between. Yep.
Few and far between. There are some businesses that are very attractive that, software companies and tech companies, people will knock on your door if you have a really cool competitive edge. But I would venture to say 95% of businesses out there aren't really like that. And you can become attractive, but if your revenue isn't a certain size, your earnings aren't a certain size, nobody's really going to do that, right? Unless you have some innovative product, which again isn't most people.
So starting early, perhaps the first day of business, for those individuals who are spending all their time working to build their business, when thereafter is a good time to really
So if you don't listen
serious.
to me and start when you do start your business and learn from my mistakes that nobody does, at minimum, it should be 3 years. Ideally, you want to start 5 years out in that planning process. And it could just be taking one little, problem in the business that makes it less valuable or non-transferable and just working on that for the first year. And then looking at your business value and, okay, because you could start planning it, but let's do the valuation 5 years out, right? And talk to your financial professional and say, this is the value of my business. What do I need to retire, right? And there might be a pretty big gap there between like your lifestyle and what you want to do after the sale versus what your business is now. So the answer would be, well, you can grow your business and get it to a bigger value, or you just work your business longer and that you don't spend as much time in retirement or whatever it is you're going to do next, right? So I think it starts to like, if you're looking to exit, what do you need to get to an exit? What's the number that you need to have, right? And so you start planning that. And if you don't have the cash flow to dump into your savings during that time and you're going to really count on that exit, then you need to be realistic with what that is.
I think that's wise, and we try to initiate those conversations very early on in the onboarding process with our business owner clients. We'll reference back or call back to an episode we recorded earlier, episode number 8, where we had another guest, Sean Garrett, who specializes in business law. So, one of the first steps when you start your business, aside from planning your business continuation or your business exit strategy, needs to be setting up an operating agreement as well as a buy-sell arrangement, right? Even if you're a solopreneur, if you have customers and you have employees, and you're really the sole intellectual property in the business, one, we're going to talk about it here in a second, but that's going to reduce your overall valuation because everything's tied to you if we remove you from the business. But maybe going out and identifying maybe a friend, another competitor, someone that you have good relations with to say, hey, if I pass away, I want you to absorb my business, or I want you to come buy my business so that my patients or my customers still have somewhere to go and my staff still has somewhere to rely on and show up to so that they can provide for themselves. And you mentioned, as early as starting 3 years in advance, I would say worst case scenario, right? The earlier, the better. Give yourself enough of a runway, 5 to 8 years in advance of this, or even when you start the business, start thinking about what the back half is going to look like as you're starting to develop the front half, and understanding that it's going to continue to change. We will often bring up the fact that, hey, we want to have 90 to 180 day sprints with our business owner clients. We want to be able to identify what are at least up to 5 things we want to work on from a business planning and personal planning aspect, right? You brought up the idea of how much income do I need to have or assets do I need to have to sustain my lifestyle when I exit the workforce or sell my practice or sell my business. Like, that's where the personal planning comes into play. And so we're working with them to try to figure out, how can I harvest my gains as I'm growing the valuation of my business along the way? And then let's check in every so often so that we can modify and adjust and make new implementations on increasing the valuation of the business, but also starting to harvest some of those gains out of the business so it doesn't stay tied up. And now we get to a point to where we want to sell it. And it's like, hey, guess what? You can't sell it. So everything you thought you were getting isn't there. Oh, by the way, now you have to keep working until you are toes up in the ground.
That's right. If you're going to look to start 3 years out from the transition and there's a gap between what you need to retire, what you think that business is worth, well, we're 3 years out. Say the answer is we have to kind of grow revenue and we need to kind of make more earnings. We got to cut costs or whatever that is. you need to buy another machine so you can double your production, right? That investment is going to take cash flow out of the company, and you might have to reinvest. So the profits that you're going to get for maybe 1, 2, 3 years, you're going to take that off the table and reinvest it into the company. And now you're looking to sell when they're going to look back at earnings. Well, you've had 3 years of kind of down numbers. Yeah, because I've been reinvesting into the company. And that gives people some pause. Well, your earnings aren't really there to justify the value, because they're really looking at, 3 years prior to sale is really where the heavy weight of the business value is coming from. And if you're 3 years out and you're like, there's a gap here, when people call me and I said, well, you got to invest some money, buy more machines. You got a backlog of work, crank out more work. Well, that's a big investment. I got to hire more people. I got to get a bigger facility. They take a ton of money off the table and now they go to sell. Well, you might be 5 years out from that point. So if the criteria is that you have a gap, and the solution that you discover with your advisors is that I need to make the business bigger, then 3 years is enough time. That's why 5 to 10 years is probably the correct number. Most people call me and they're saying, well, I need to sell. This is just what it is. Unfortunately, you might be leaving some money on the table because they just don't want to take money off and do. A lot of people don't want to do the work, because if you wait until you're 70 years old to sell your business, you're probably not going to have the energy or the care to really do all that work to get it to sell when you're 75. And at that point, for what purpose? You just don't want to really enjoy your life as much anymore. So why don't you start that earlier? And if that's the answer, at least know. So you should start at least, like you said, 10 years before. Just where am I heading? What's my growth rate? What I'm thinking about? What is it going to cost? Well, I just double my revenue. Well, there's a lot to do that. You got to double your staff. You got to double your production size. You got to double your facility size. And people just think that the answer is always super easy, and it's not, right? So I mean,
it's not real estate, right?
It's not
as
easy.
Simple.
Not as easy. Yeah.
I guess the question that we have is for individuals who are getting ahead of exit planning, for individuals who understand that there may or may not be a gap where I am right now versus where I want to be.
Yeah.
The first question or thought is, who do I need to bring in to make the changes necessary to get where I want to be? What professionals, what dream team do I need in my corner? And perhaps, if I've got limited time, what order do I need to start having those conversations? Can you shed some insight for business owners that you speak with daily, that you work with regularly? Right. Who do you want them to talk to first? Is it you? Is it someone else? And in what order do you want?
It's you.
It's always Brady.
It's always you.
Get Brady on the line.
Yes. I'll tell you a story, and I'll give you a realistic example. My father wanted this crazy amount of number for his business, was nowhere even in the stratosphere what was reasonable for his business. And I said, Dad, you live a very modest life. You don't spend flashy cars. You go hunting and you do your thing. And why do you need that much money? I said, and he goes, I don't know. It's what I want. And I said, well, why don't we talk to an advisor, right, to just kind of look at it to see what you really need. And the number was far lower than what the business was. And ironically, it was just about the same amount of that he needed to sell the business for. And I totally kept myself independent of my dad's advisor and said, look, I'm not going to tell you what I'm selling it for. I need you to tell him what he needs to live off of based on his budget. I don't want to get involved in that because, parents, they don't listen to you anyway. So they did that. I think once he saw that, he got a little level of comfort, right? So that's where it starts is, what do I need? You got to give them, if your goal is to retire at X age, what do we need to have your assets to by then? Or say you're on a plan now and you are saving money and we're projected, well, I have this much money saved. Well, what's the gap difference, right? And that's where you guys really come in, because I don't want to waste really my time to get you an offer for your business first.
If you can't take it to begin with, or you won't
can't take it. And that has happened to me. I mean, when I started off, I got excited, got a couple deals, and this one guy, if you're listening, you know who I'm talking to, and and he signed it, and I worked for 7 months. He stayed really firm on his price, and I was like, okay, well, that was the price that he stayed firm on, and I agreed to sell it for that price. Then I worked the buyer up over a couple months to get him to the full price, right? So he did take it. Going through the sale process, we get out from closing. We were kind of before he was just getting ready to sign this purchase agreement to make it official. And it's not enough money for him now, right? And so from that point on, if I do evaluation work, we get evaluation done, then you need to go to your accountant and to your advisors and to say, does that number work? Because I don't know your personal business. I'm only involved in the business side. I don't know your personal situation. I don't know how much debt you have or how many girlfriends you have. You need to figure that out, right? So that's number one. And that goes back to the plan. And I know we've been beating the plan to death here, and then secondly, You need to say, okay, what's my business worth? This is the biggest asset on my financial statement. What can I get for it? And that's where you should be engaging a business broker, business advisor, a financial advisor. Sometimes accounting firms have valuation people there. And you don't need a fancy, if somebody tries to sell you a $10,000 valuation just to give you a rough estimate of your business value, please don't do that. Call me instead. You don't need to spend that kind of money. But if you're just trying to get an eyeball on what it's worth, at least get an eyeball, right? What it's worth today, and then understand where that gap is. Because you might be in a spot where you could sell it today.
And I would even say for some business owners, if they knew that they could sell it today for exactly what they wanted, and this could be a business that they're operating that's maybe not their number one passion, then maybe they sell the business for a value that they otherwise thought they couldn't get. It's more than what they were thinking. And now they exit stage right to their third act where maybe it is something that's more passion driven. And it's not that they need the revenue from this new business to sustain their lifestyle. So then they can actually be more passionate about it and have more fun with it versus being tied down to, again, taking on the stresses and the risks of growing a business, taking care of the staff in the seats and the customers and patients that come through the door. And again, just not being as proactive. And so if I understand correctly, then, if I own my business, which funny enough I do, then I should be engaging with obviously a financial professional, someone who's helping me with personal financial planning, because I firmly believe that you can't do successful business planning without personal planning, right? It's very much a DNA helix. The balance sheets are going to continue to interact on an ongoing basis, and the business is an asset, hopefully, worth something that sits on your personal balance sheet, which is why we harp on trying to harvest the gains of this thriving asset, okay? You want to have a CPA, certified public accountant, or just a trusted accountant, someone who can help you from a tax code, tax law perspective and make sure that you're not paying more in taxes than you absolutely need to. A business attorney, someone who is going to help you structure deals, help you put some sort of moat around your financial fortress so you can have some financial fortitude. And of course, the mergers and acquisition broker, right? Someone who's going to help you dress your business up, make it as attractive as possible so that when it goes into the bar, it's got multiple people coming up to it wanting to get its number and buy it a drink. And you're able to get the most out of it and not leaving any money on the table. Now, I think this is a good lead in to, well, what goes into actually making the business sellable? And this goes back to a statement I made earlier around 80% of the business valuation being tied up into intangible assets, right? And we talk about the 4 C's, which are known as human capital, customer capital, structural capital, and social capital. Everyone might have different lingo around it, but that's relatively common in this sphere. And it's this idea that, well, if I remove the founder of this business from the operating seat, can the business continue to thrive at the same capacity? Will it continue to accelerate at the same speed if I take the driver out of the seat?
That's right. What we're focusing on is retirement, because, and I think financial planners or financial professionals that you're thinking of retiring, but you're right. I mean, I've sold a lot of people's businesses that were in their late 20s, early 30s. They're not keeping companies for 40 years anymore. And it's okay to pivot, right? I want to kind of say a disclaimer there. It is totally okay to, I don't like this anymore. I want to do something more fun. And some people said entrepreneurship is not for me. I want to go back to the workforce. That's okay too, right? So it isn't always retirement. I know we're focusing on that here, but just to say, I've had one guy tell me he was running a company and he just was miserable. He wasn't making as much money as he was making in a previous career. And I said, why are you here? Like, you don't have to be here. Well, I'm taking a hit for what I paid for the company. I understand that, but like, you can make that up in like 6 months if you go back to your previous career. And he just had this mental idea that I just can't take less money for what I paid for it. But yeah, you got to pivot, right? Everybody pivots. Every company pivots, right? They shut down departments.
Loss aversion bias, right? It's a loss aversion bias.
That's 100%.
Where you hold on to it until you get at least break even, but there's no confirmation of you even making it back to break even. So then you just get stuck in this toxic relationship with this business.
And right. And people out, like, you don't understand, like, with your business, the way that we're moving in this technology now and everything's happening. So if you could be an obsolete business in 5 years, you don't know if another COVID's going to hit tomorrow. So you need to understand, you need to have some plans in place. And people don't ever really want to talk about it for whatever reason, but it is something that you just should start conversations early. So, because as you can tell, we're making this a series of podcasts. It is a lot to discuss in the whole process. So for sure, take it in bite-sized pieces because it's just a lot to consider. So start early and we'll move on from there. But the biggest thing with people that I see to sell, the number one thing that will make your business less sellable or sometimes not sellable at all is your financial reporting. There are so many people that aren't doing reporting the right way. They're not hiring a bookkeeper. They're hiring somebody in the office to do it. Get a bookkeeper, hire a fractional CFO, whoever it is, to start building your financial reporting so that it makes sense, because 80% of the value of your business is based on the cash flow and the way the reports are. And if your reports are spotty or they're not consistent or you're switching accounts and you're putting expense in this account one day and another account this day, and it doesn't tell a story, that's going to raise risk for a buyer and that's going to decrease your price just because they're going to accommodate for risk. But if you have steady financials that tell a story for the past 5 years, that is like the number one thing. And it surprises me that people that want to exit, really, they talk about how great their business is and our 5-star Google reviews, and they're the hottest in the industry. And I'm like, okay, awesome. I get really excited. I go and get behind the hood of the business and I'm like, what is going on here? Right? I mean, I understand it's all pretty, but like if you can't get the basics of the foundation of the financial reporting, you're going to have a problem. So, right. So an accountant, CPA, bookkeeper, fractional CFO, bring someone in to make sense. And I understand that you as an owner, you know it, but the buyer doesn't, right? And frankly, the buyer doesn't trust you. He needs to see that for himself.
And I think that steps into, Michael, the comment that you made about the value of the business really being driven by, hey, can the owner, the person really in charge, step out of the driver's seat? If we've got a financial statement or a set of financials that look like the Wizard of Oz behind the curtain, depending on which direction that you're looking, it's like, okay, it's going to be pretty challenging for the person to step out from behind the curtain and say, I'm not the big face that's hanging up there that everybody's seeing.
Right. If you're only seeing your accountant once a year when it's tax season, that's a problem. You should be doing it quarterly at a bare minimum, monthly preferred, right? So if you're not taking that time, that's a big one. The second one, right, which you just said, is the owner dependency. There are people that call me, I'm not kidding you, not saying that I sell these businesses, but they want to sell a business and they're making really good money. And I'm like, wow. But guess what? They're the main sales guy. Everybody knows Joe the plumber, right? Everybody calls Joe up on a cell phone. Joe's out there like, shaking hands with the customer. Joe's face is on all the billboards. Everybody knows him. He's the local guy. Probably has a great company. His financial reporting could be great. You make a ton of revenue, could be work. But what's going to happen when Joe leaves? Is it going to be, right? And there's risk. And there's ways around that risk. I mean, there is ways around it. But what that's going to mean to you, not that you may not get the full price, but there are going to be clawbacks in your purchase agreement to kind of hold on to some of the purchase price for post-performance when you exit. And you don't want to be in that situation. I mean, sometimes I've sold businesses where we have those clauses because that's the only way it's going to really sell. But ultimately, you want to get as much money as you can at the closing table.
So financial reporting, owner dependency, what else is out there is a deal killer or just a challenge when coming to the seller's table?
Customer concentration is a big one. That is, if you call me and people get excited, you start in business, you get this big account, Amazon, this is a big account for you. You're cleaning all their warehouses, right? And Amazon's giving you now 50% of your revenue. And you get excited, your business, oh my God, this is a lot of money, right? It's like just doubled my revenue overnight. Yeah, that's great when you're running it, right? And you're going to hire staff and you're going to do all the things. But now a buyer's going to buy that. Well, one customer leaves, your business is worth nothing, like absolutely nothing, right? And on the flip side, even when you're running the company, 50% is coming from one, you're going to hire all these people, give these people, careers and whatever. And then that one customer leaves, you have to lay everyone off, right? So don't get so excited when you see these big 50%, they come in, but you got to have a plan to get that number lower. And the rule of thumb here is less than anybody that has 10% or more of your revenue, there is going to be a clawback, an earn out, post-close adjustment based on how long that customer sticks around. And that's negotiable. It depends on the buyer's risk. They might say, hey, I'll pay you if the customer sticks around for 5 years. I'll pay you so much per year based on that contract. Sometimes it's a year. It just depends how much they have and what the risk is there. That's a really big one. And if you might even have contracts with customers that don't transfer to a buyer, they might have clauses. If you're looking to sell, look at your clauses that if I sell the business, can this contract transfer to the new entity? You might be stuck with a stock sale, right? But there might be a clause in there that says, hey, if majority interest of the company sold, we have to consent to that transfer to the new vendor. So all that causes risk. And you want to start looking at some of those legal contracts with your customers and relationships that you have and kind of get some clauses in there as they renew before you sell. Asset base is pretty much easy to talk about. That's just what your stuff worth. Income based or market comparisons. The main driver here, unless you have some IP that people want, income based and what the market's trading at is probably the two. I mean, there's not a lot. I mean, this goes really, you could go super deep in valuation stuff.
So just to summarize what you just elaborately laid out for us, Justin, when we think about the intellectual properties of the business, right, and what makes it so valuable, and hopefully it not being solely tied to the business owner who's driving the car or driving the business, again, we want to highlight the 4 C's: human capital. What does your staff look like? Is it just you? Do you have a team? What are they doing to help support and keep the ship moving, keep the mechanism moving and growing, right? Are they bought into the culture and the philosophy and the vision of the actual business? Structural capital. What types of procedures and processes are in place? You broke down that, hey, if the finances are very hard to translate and decipher, probably not a good situation from a marketability standpoint. Why would I come in as a potential buyer and be like, hey, I want to buy this business, but I have no idea how these books actually break down? I'm just seeing different numbers that just don't add up or make sense. There's not consistency year over year, and that's fine because businesses will grow and expand, but the buyer wants to feel comfortable about the processes and procedures and just the overall structural capital. The social capital. This isn't so much highlighting customers or patients. It's more so, where are the relationships held? Are the relationships just held with the business owner, and when he sells, those relationships are gone? Or are the relationships broken up and diversified across the business owner as well as the staff or the key employees within the business? Making sure that those key relationships remain even after the owner of the business has exited stage right. And then lastly, the customer capital. Also, who owns those relationships? Is there so much customer loyalty to the owner that the owner leaves and now they're changing their service provider or who they want to work with? Or has the owner done such a good job at delegating responsibilities across the team that he's put in place to help support him to where he leaves and everybody's still just as happy because, again, of the culture, the structural procedures, and everything else that has been built out from a brand recognition standpoint?
So a lot of complexity that we're starting to lay out, and we really haven't even got into the meat and potatoes as to actually structuring the deal and working through the operations of getting from start to finish on a close. But the big things that I'm pulling out of today's conversation is, why is this conversation important? It's because there are a ton of business owners that are looking to exit their business. We've spent a lot of time today discussing, hey, what might it look like for a retiree type business owner? But Justin, as you mentioned, there are just as many business owners, buyers and sellers who are simply looking to pivot or transition based on what's best for them.
That's right.
So a ton of opportunity on a day-to-day basis, and only more moving forward as those baby boomer business owners really are forced to transition. A big piece of any consideration in buy-sell planning is going to be when you start. Right? At the end of the day, starting as early as possible, perhaps even the first day you start a business, is going to lead to better outcomes, or at least understanding of what better outcomes could look like. And it's super important to have the right team of professionals having conversations that are coordinated, right? Whether it's how much do I need and what's my number, or what do my financials look like and how is it going to contribute to whatever number that I do end up getting. And then big picture, there are very simple things in that runway window that we, the professional team, can work on to help really sweeten the deal or avoid a huge pitfall or just an ultimate deal killer. So big picture, what is there to expect in the next episode of the mini-series? It's really more so the nitty-gritty as to how are we getting into deal structure? What do those conversations look like? What are some tips and tricks when it comes to negotiating? It's details in regards to how do I make a transition? What does operational movement look like? And how do we coordinate that with everything that we've talked about today? And then, hey, big picture, once I'm really on the other side of exit, what do I do next? Right? What does that transition look like? And how is that team still involved? So, Justin, we appreciate you being here today. I think there's been a lot of value that we have discussed. Tell us a little bit more for business owners listening, for individuals considering buying or selling a business. How do they reach you? What does that first conversation look like?
Hey guys, thanks for having me today. I look forward to our next chat. You can reach me on LinkedIn at Justin Sandridge, or you can check me out if you're outside the Charlotte area. You can check out murphybusiness.com, or if you're in Charlotte, sellcharlottebusiness.com and look me up. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Financial Fortitude. We hope you gained valuable insights from our conversation with Justin Sandridge on navigating the complexities of buying or selling a business. Whether you're planning your next big move or just starting to think about your options, remember, preparation and the right guidance can make all the difference in achieving a successful outcome.
If you found this episode helpful, don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode, like and share this podcast with others who could benefit, and leave us a review to let us know how we're doing and what topics you'd like us to cover next. And if you have any questions or want to connect directly, visit us at www.genesiswealthplanning.com/AMA. We'd love to hear from you. Let's keep building your financial fortitude together. Thanks again for listening, and we'll catch you on the next episode. Thank you for joining us this week on the Financial Fortitude Podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show and learned something along the way.
If you're looking for financial guidance that is personalized to your specific needs, we're here to help. Visit us at www.genesiswealthplanning.com to book a complimentary consultation.
That's it for today. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out on future episodes. And as always, please share with others you feel could benefit from the show. See you next time.
This podcast is for informational purposes only and is not to be construed as tax, legal, or investment advice. Although the information has been gathered from sources believed to be reliable, please note that individual situations can vary. Therefore, the information should be relied upon only when coordinated with individual professional advice. Guest speakers and their firms are not affiliated with or endorsed by Park Avenue Securities, Guardian, or Genesis Wealth Planning LLC, and opinions stated are their own. Guardian, its subsidiaries, agents, and employees do not provide tax, legal, or accounting advice. Consult your tax, legal, or accounting professional regarding your individual situation. All investments and investment strategies contain risk and may lose value. All scenarios and names mentioned herein are purely fictional and have been created solely for educational purposes. Any resemblance to existing situations, persons, or fictional characters is coincidental. The information presented should not be used as the basis for any specific investment advice. Michael Acosta and Brady Hammerly are registered representatives and financial advisors of Park Avenue Securities, LLC, PAS. Securities, products, and advisory services offered through Park Avenue Securities, member FINRA, SIPC. Financial representatives of the Guardian Life Insurance Company of America, Guardian, New York, New York. Park Avenue Securities is a wholly owned subsidiary of Guardian. Consolidated Planning Group, Inc. and Genesis Wealth Planning, LLC are not affiliates or subsidiaries of Park Avenue Securities or Guardian. Michael Acosta's California Insurance License Number 0M50974 and Brady Hammerly's California Insurance License Number 4353077. 6991809.9, expiration 125.